Hello and welcome to the Scramble. I'm Adrienne Lefebvre. Today we're going to talk about the classified information that's been leaked about the NSA surveillance programs. We also have an update on the Nevada bill concerning background checks on all gun sales, and we'll even talk about sexism in the movies. A new study finds that this trend is actually on the rise. Please welcome my panel today. We have with us Mark Ciavola. You are a junior in political science and the undergraduate student body president. Back with us again is Cassidy Blue. You are a senior in journalism and media studies. Looking forward to that graduation day.
Oh yes, December can't come soon enough.
Slow down, we still have summertime to go through. Alex Belto, welcome back. You are a junior in political science, pursuing a minor in Brookings policy. And Jenny Leese, our graduate student of the day, pursuing a master's in journalism and media studies.
Yes.
Thank you all for being on the show. Let's jump right in. It has recently come to light that the National Security Agency has been, and likely still is, collecting phone and email records of millions of Americans. Many people are outraged by this and believe this to be a gross violation of our constitutional rights. Government officials have responded by offering information about how these records have helped thwart terror plots in 20 different nations. Mark, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you believe that collecting the phone records of Americans is a necessary step in preventing terrorism, or do you think this is an overreach of the counterterrorism measures that have been approved by Congress?
Okay. So here's
you know it's going to be good when he says "okay."
Originally, this was supposed to be, tapping phone lines of people who are calling known terror suspects overseas or countries that harbor terror suspects overseas, or incoming phone calls from those places. It was never meant to monitor phone calls between, say, you and I, or emails between you and I. And I don't have a problem with that if the NSA wants to track what's going on between Americans and terror suspects abroad. Okay? But the fact that they are now accumulating all of these phone calls and emails just in case they may need them in the future, because that is what it is. It's this giant database they can go back to and say, well, let's see who else you talked to for the last 5 years. Is absolutely unacceptable, completely. And I think there needs to be an investigation of how we ever got to this point.
So it is a violation in your humble opinion?
Absolutely, and it goes well beyond what the Patriot Act was ever intended to do.
Alex, you are grinning.
The Patriot Act is in 200 words, which basically gives the executive branch the power to do anything. It's also been passed by bipartisan Congress continually. So in no way is this at all a violation of the Patriot Act. It very clearly gives the executive branch the authority to protect us in national security. Also, they can get the phone numbers. They use an advanced algorithm to determine if numbers are suspect, but then they have to go to a court to get a warrant to even see who those numbers belong to. So yes, they have 5 years of data, but hardly is that 5 years of data accessible or available to the public or to be used for anything except for national security purposes. There's also been, it's been around for 12 years. If there was a serious risk that there have been political abuses, you could probably name an example, or at least, a chain of examples, which would have shown that the executive branch has overreached their authority. Hardly think this is bad. I think it's net beneficial. There have been numerous terrorist attacks that have been prevented.
So you think it's a good thing that it is a necessary
and entirely
component.
Constitutional. No way.
I'm gonna let Mark formulate his comeback. Ladies, let's weigh in.
Well, I think it's an overreach. I'm against this, and this has been something that has been going on for some time now. And one of the things that that's become really popular is Shia LaBeouf. Like, he did an interview with The Tonight Show a little while back, like in 2008, and research for the Eagle Eye. FBI individual let him know that 1 in 5 phone conversations are recorded, and the FBI...
For average Americans, 1 in 5?
That's what he told him, and he also played him back a phone conversation he had, like an intimate phone conversation he had with like a female 2 years prior before he ever got on this project.
Where did you...
This was on The Tonight Show in
Breaking
2008.
news here on the Scramble.
This has been going around YouTube and like on a lot of sites, and a lot of shows are picking this up. So it's bringing to light, just some of these other questions, because this was 2008 that he was talking about this. But I mean, for someone to be, because in the research that he was doing for this movie, he's looking into the NSA and other things, and for them to kind of let him know on some of this information is kind of shocking. But
that was an FBI official that
it was FBI.
I find that very hard to believe, considering you need to have, like, even FBI official found that or had that. He would not be able to show it to a citizen.
Well, of course,
I mean, this sounds like
he
a
wouldn't be
B-list
able to,
actor
just like we can't
trying
go
to make
spend
play.
millions of dollars on retreats in California. I'm going to tell you this, though.
Cassie, hold
There's
on.
a lot
We're
of things
coming
that
to you.
say you can't do something. People do it anyway. I think what's important to understand here is that take Verizon, for example, okay? Verizon will have a record of all of the phone calls completed on its network, all of the text messages sent on its network. All of those calls and text messages are coded to know which towers they bounced off of. I can tell, Verizon can tell where you were when you texted this individual. So to have a backlog of all of this stuff saved by the government versus going to Verizon with your warrant at the time and say, this is what we need, I think is unacceptable. We should be able to go to them when you have that warrant, when you have that need, and say, I need to know who made this phone call 5 years ago. Verizon can pull that information.
There are actually new regulations that mandate that telephone companies have to delete a lot of that information. So things like picture messages no longer can be traced on the internet, as well as text messages. It's also very difficult
They have
to get that
Snapchat now
information.
anyway, so.
Yeah, it's not. Doesn't seem like something that's viable. Because
Snapchat.
how would the government know to look for somebody unless they use the type of algorithm that allowed them to say this person has made 20
Because
calls
they're
to
the
Saudi
government, they can
Arabia
do whatever
in the
they
past?
want to do.
All right,
That's
gentlemen.
the problem.
They haven't
They
overstepped
can
their
do
bounds.
anything
All right,
they
time out,
want.
Cassidy, and then we'll come back to you.
I mean, I guess I'm mixed in this. It scares the fool out of me to know that they
Nice choice of words.
to know that they can, store all this information for years to come and, use it against you. But at the same time, I do understand we are fighting a different kind of war, and I understand that maybe it does help to thwart terror. But I don't know if it. I do think to a certain extent that they have overstepped their bounds. So I'm kind of mixed in this because I understand the necessity for it, but then at the same time you say nothing has happened in the last 12 years, so that should be a reflection of the lack of abuse of this power. But I mean that's just because the last 12 years have nothing's come to light that we know of doesn't mean that this power, this enormous power that they have, will not be abused in the future and hasn't been abused just because we don't know about it. It's just it's frightening. But it's also,
I think we should also look into how we got into a situation in the first place. I mean, if we actually look back to the Cold War, the United States, the CIA, we were actually looking for Muslim extremists, and we were training them in Afghanistan. One of those individuals was Osama bin Laden. And then later on in the 80s up until 92, we were selling weapons, giving weapons to Saddam Hussein in the war against Iran. And then who becomes our
Right. Well, that was in our best interest at the time.
who becomes a threat now? And then even prior to that war, even prior to us giving weapons to Iran, Reagan was involved with the Iran-Contra scandal, where he was selling weapons to Iran through Israel. So we're basically, if you look back in the 80s, 90s, we're giving weapons to both sides. Both of these countries are still at the center of a lot of the issues that we're having now.
Imagine, I can't believe it, but we have to take a short break. When we come back, I
My
think
head explodes from that.
Mark will respond when we return. Stay with us.
For others, it may have just been a summer job. But for me, it was training. Now I'm an Air Force pararescueman, and my job is to save lives. Make the right choices today, and be ready for the challenges tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Think you found every hazard out here today? Think again. The spot you missed could be a killer. That spot on your skin could be skin cancer. Fact is, if you're a man over 50, you're in a group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma, the kind that kills one person every hour. 1 in 5 Americans is likely to develop a form of skin cancer during their lifetime. That's why your best shot is to check for a spot. It's easy. Follow through and check your skin. It could be the save of a lifetime. Go to spotskincancer.org to find out how. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Never a dull moment. Before the break, Jenny was talking about basically the cause of this problem that we're dealing with now, the NSA surveillance, how they're doing it. You had some comments before the break that Mark is really wanting to respond to. Mark?
First of all, I think that has nothing to do with this. I think the NSA thing is its own thing, and talking about what we do in wars and by giving weapons to whoever is a different thing. But what really drives me crazy is that we can talk about how we gave weapons to rebels in Afghanistan to fight off the Soviet Union. You forget that the Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan, so we were assisting in Afghanistan remaining a sovereign country at the time. We had no idea what would happen in the future, nor would anyone else have known. We do now, but that hasn't stopped us from going into Libya and giving weapons to rebels who are Al-Qaeda, talking about giving weapons to rebels in Syria who have ties to Al-Qaeda.
Is about to explode.
You know, so clearly it really doesn't matter whether it was Reagan or Obama or whoever, and it doesn't matter who we're giving the weapons to. The fact is you wake up in the morning and you say, what is in the best interest of this country today? And that's what you do. And you can't help what happens in the future, but really quickly, because I don't want to monopolize this on something that's irrelevant to this topic.
Future, but you should be thinking about it.
But I will say this, the comment was mentioned, it may have been during the break, that we give the weapons to people who then use them against us, or we falsify info because we don't know really what weapons they had. Well, we knew what weapons Saddam Hussein had because we gave them to him. The UN said, we know what weapons you have, you need to show them or we're going to invade. And then the talking point was, there are no weapons. Well, the reality is we knew where they were. He was supposed to tell us where they were. They wound up in Syria. Have a nice day. That brings us to where we are today.
So what about the NSA?
I don't think any...
Go ahead, Alex, please.
I don't know what Syria or Libya have to do with terrorism. None of them have to do with Al-Qaeda. I just want to clarify that.
Oh, yes, none.
There
are no rebels in Libya or Syria with ties to Al-Qaeda.
There are not very many, if there are. Maybe one or two that have somewhat of connections.
Sure.
Al-Qaeda is primarily in Africa right now.
Okay.
South of Libya.
Sure.
I'll show you during the break.
There will not be a consensus on that. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's been any refutation that the NSA checks can be effective. There are numerous examples where we have caught terrorists and avoided attacks. There have been no examples of political abuse. I don't understand.
Well, I think
it's a matter, but I think it's a matter of yes, it can be proven to thwart terror and to prevent it in other countries or even in our own country. But the question is that do we want? Is our civil liberties, are our constitutional, protections to give them up? I mean, is that worth it? Where does it end with that? I mean, they're storing phone records and email records of U.S. citizens. Where does it end? They can kill us on our own soil. Where does it end?
Well, and I think just as a point to because I think you might be a little outnumbered on this topic right now, but I think to that point, we are talking about the IRS scandal that broke and all of their heads of departments being replaced. The AP is still outraged because of how the government has treated the press. I think that, and those things can be related. I think that's where a lot of the public outrage is coming, that there seems to be hints that it may be.
And I think that's understandably why the public is outraged, but I think that's because they're misinformed. The difference between the IRS scandal and Benghazi is that there's no court that checked on any of that. When you have to get a warrant to even figure out whose phone numbers they are. That's when you have to go to a court, and a court has to approve it. The Fourth Amendment doesn't support unreasonable searches, but clarifies you can have reasonable searches. The court has defined that as meaning you need to have a warrant. Those other instances have nothing, like the IRS, don't have anything to do with. That's just
I think the main argument is whether this is reasonable or unreasonable. And I stand to say I believe this is unreasonable, and I believe this is infringing our civil liberties. And I think historical reference is important, just because if we're looking at the American public and we're trying to find out, what they're doing or how they can be involved, I'm just saying historical reference is important to see. Look how bad the government has turned things.
Can abuse things.
But that's not with its own people. I mean, does anybody really believe that if the IRS had to go to court to be able to use that information, that they would have gone to court to use it? I mean, they just used it.
Time out. Here we go. Time out. We have to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to have to move on a little bit. We will bring it closer to home, and we'll talk about gun control in Nevada. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you could see anything in the world, what would it be?
I'd love to see Paris. I like to see cupcakes falling from the sky.
My daughter, married and happy,
I want to see things the way I used to.
Chances are, someone you love may one day be affected by macular degeneration or glaucoma. Log on to seeabettertomorrow.org or call 1-800-437-2423 to learn about glaucoma and macular degeneration. Call 1-800-437-2423 or log on to seeabettertomorrow.org.
I just want to see more of the things I love.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
Welcome back. I think we were going to do a little follow-up on the last topic, but I think that we have probably accurately surmised that we're not going to solve anything on that. So let's move on. Governor Brian Sandoval stayed true to his word and has vetoed the bill calling for universal background checks on all gun sales in Nevada, saying that these checks, quote, constitute an erosion of Nevadans' Second Amendment rights under the United States Constitution, end quote. Alex, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you believe that the private sale and transfer of firearms should be allowed without a background check?
No. I think that the bill itself, there were some problems with the bill, so I somewhat understand the veto. However, I think background checks are mandatory. The same reason why you have to have a driver's license, the same reason why when you buy alcohol when you're 21, you have to show your ID. It's just the only way to enforce a law is to check, and that seems logical. There's no way.
People cannot exchange their driver's license privately. I mean, for the private sales.
A lot of stores take down your driver's license number to ensure that your driver's ID is valid. That seems to be the same thing. There's also the bill itself had checks on abuse of that information, so you couldn't share that you had conducted business, otherwise there would be legal repercussions. So there's no way. I think that the bill itself, there were some flaws because the bill outlawed gun shows instead of allowing for there just to be a licensed dealer at the gun show, which would have been a better middle ground. But I think the portion where should have background checks, we should definitely do that.
So you kind of agree with the veto, but think that this needs to be chipped away a little bit more.
Yes.
And honed down a little bit. Jenny?
Actually, I agree. Because I think part
Calm
of it...
down.
I'm shocked. Because, I agree the veto is right, and I believe that, there were problems in the bill. But I think another issue with this is another reason why we need a full-time legislative session. The next time
That's
we're meeting
also
is 2015.
reoccurring good
Ours
point.
just ended. We have a lot of issues in Nevada, and we definitely need to be meeting much more regularly.
Mark, weigh in on this one.
I mean, look, we already have background checks. We covered this on a previous show. I understand the want to have background checks for private sales, but the reality is if I know my brother has a permit and I want to give my brother a gun, I should be able to do that without having to go down to a gun store that's approved by the government and do a background check that I have to pay for or that he has to pay for.
Because you're responsible,
when the legwork has already
has a permit, and you would only give it to
done.
him if your brother had a permit,
well,
right?
But
I mean,
Cassidy,
you can't
this is
trust that that's
exactly
gonna be in
why
the hand of
Cassidy.
no.
This is exactly why these
Sorry.
laws only punish the legal people. Because
But they
if you're going to
wouldn't.
break the law anyway, you wouldn't give a crap if there was expanded background
So
checks
why
or
are
not.
there any laws?
And as far as the gun show goes, there are legal dealers at the gun shows that do follow the rules and follow the law. The problem is you have those people that show up to the gun shows to sell their guns on the down low, and the gun dealers that are there, the legal ones that are part of that show, they don't want them there either. So obviously there's room for compromise on that, but it goes too far, it went too far, and that's why it was vetoed.
So you guys are kind of on the same page as far as wanting to see this bill a little more specific about what they're calling for. Cassidy,
Well,
except
I mean,
for
I can understand not wanting to outlaw gun shows entirely, but at the same time, the question was, do you think that background checks need to be, performed for private sales? And I think yes, they do, or even handing off to your friend,
or maybe
your brother,
with an exception
or whomever.
for family or something like that.
No, because you can't put an exception for family, because like I said, if you knew your brother didn't have a permit and you still give him the gun, then that wouldn't be illegal. I mean,
well,
under
a criminal's
the
going to do
current-
it anyway.
But that's not good justification for not having a law. The whole drug war, it should just be abolished then, considering that people are going to use drugs anyway. I mean, if that's the
funny
law,
that so many people feel it should be.
But I'm just saying, if that's your reasoning, like he said, we should have no laws. Criminals are going to do them anyway. The law-abiding citizens are not going to do it. So why do we even need laws
Look,
anyway?
There's no doubt that we have an issue, or at least a perceived issue, with guns in this country, okay? And every time there's a shooting, it all comes back up again. We need to ban guns, or we need to have stronger restrictions on guns. So when you show me a law that could actually prevent one of these situations from happening and doesn't just punish the legal gun owners, then we can have a rational conversation.
I'm sorry, we have to take a short break, and we may have to leave it here. When we come back, we're going to talk about something less political and more social. Sexism in the movies. Stay with us.
At what age is the color that your skin was meant to be no longer beautiful? Every year, millions of young women try to change the skin they were born with and say they die for darker skin. Sadly, some actually do. Melanoma is the second most common cancer in teens and young adults 15 to 29. And one person dies from melanoma every hour. It's time. Change your thinking, not your skin. Stop tanning. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Winston, just one more inning, Grandma.
Ever notice how many things today kids can do without actually moving? A whole lot of things their parents used to do the hard way. So many kids' activities today seem to leave out the activity part, which makes exercise even more important for children. In fact, new research tells us the best time to enhance bone development is during childhood and adolescence. And just getting children to walk an extra 35 minutes a day could spare them the pain of thinning bones later in life. Healthy bones come from healthy habits. Encourage your kids to get up, get out, and get moving.
Hello. Hey, Grandma, how about another grape soda?
A public service message on building strong bones for kids from the Pediatric Orthopedic Society of North America and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons.
All right, we have gone from the gun bill to taxes, and I was going to stay on that for a second, but no,
These
we are
breaks
going to.
should be televised.
They really should. They're very entertaining. Let's move on and talk about another topic that is very interesting to think about in our enlightened day and age. USC Annenberg recently did a study of female representation in popular movies. Of the top 100 grossing movies in 2012, only 28.4% of speaking roles were female. And Jenny, I'm going to go to you on this one. Do you think this is a genuine representation of our society right now? Or do you think this is just men make for better movie sales?
I'm not really that surprised. I feel like, well, the quality of movies hasn't been that great anyway. And, plus one of the things that they've been pushing for is, a lot of the movies are 3D, and not just that, but there's not so much plot anymore, and there's a lot more special effects, explosions, bombings, all this other stuff. It's much more active action roles, which happen to be much more geared to men roles. That has been the case, and so I'm not surprised of those numbers, but it doesn't mean that the movies are any good, though.
Are you surprised that the numbers? They also talked about women wearing sexually revealing clothing. Those numbers have gone up quite a bit.
Well, sex sells, and the movie industry is not doing very well right now, so I think they're grasping at whatever they possibly can to try to get any kind of sales.
Explosions with bikinis. Cassidy?
I do think it's a sad comment on our society, and of those 28.4% of women who have speaking roles in the movies, how many of those are sexually objectified positions that really don't have any merit as far as the story is concerned, and they're just there to be eye candy. And I do think it's a comment on our society, and I don't think that men bring in more sales, but I think that that's the stigma or the idea in Hollywood, that they do bring in more sales. And if you look at just look at the box office this summer, I mean, I wonder where are the women's stories. I'm not talking about chick flicks or, you know what I mean, the sappy, but where are the women's stories? I mean, you look at all of the movies out there right now, and I can't think of even one. Not one.
Women do cocktails, they don't do bombs, right? Gentlemen, weigh in here.
Mike and Molly, the show that's on TV. Yeah. Molly is hilarious. I forget her name.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
something
that's
McCarthy.
one.
I don't
That's
remember her
one.
name.
Sandra Bullock in the
The
Molly
last few
Story
movies
show.
that I've seen have been all guys. It's Hangover, This Is the End. It's all groups of guys being stupid. And it's funny and it sells, but typically you don't see women in those situations. Although Bridesmaids was a pretty decent movie, and she was in that. She was in Identity Thief, where she talked a lot as well, and that was a decent movie. But she is coming out with one with Sandra Bullock where they're like buddy cops, and that'll be good. So, I mean, they're there, but you're right.
You
It's a
gotta
lot
hunt
more
them.
men, and
we're under
never
30
even realized
seconds.
until you
Alex,
said
weigh
it.
in on this one.
On that movie, I don't know if any of you have seen the cover for that movie, but it is the most photoshopped I've ever seen, which is kind of sad that they're doing that to Two Beautiful Ladies on the cover. But also, it's also interesting that the directors, I feel like, are male, and that's the reason why the movies end up being so male-dominated. Sundance, luckily, had about 50% of the directors for their films being females, but of the top 100 of the past few years, it's 4%. So.
We are out of time again. We have to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What you doing, Dad?
My favorite thing.
Really, Dad, what are you doing?
Paying bills. Every month a stack of them come, just as regular as the rain.
What's this one?
That's a special one, son. I pay it first.
How come?
It's money for my retirement account. I put some money aside each month, just like I was paying a bill.
Wouldn't you rather buy something?
I don't want to work forever, and I don't want you to have to support me in my old age. In a way, I'm buying peace of mind. I'm on the installment plan.
Something's not right.
My first symptoms were
constant tingling in my toes.
My legs, sometimes they'll go numb.
Had double vision. They said you have multiple sclerosis.
Well, the beginning is the hardest time.
Kind of had to get a grasp on reality.
I had to adapt and change very rapidly.
I had to learn how to drive with my hands. Yeah, that was interesting.
I was a dancer. I don't see walking the way I walk any different than doing a dance. It just looks different. It's a different dance.
You see me have an off day, it doesn't take away from who I am.
A symptom may cause you not to be able to do that anymore. And at one point, I wasn't able to do any of those.
But I would exercise every day.
Since I've been cycling, it's definitely helped my walking.
To make a lot of changes in my life and just adapt to it.
I'm going to acknowledge its presence. I'm not going to discount it, but at the same time, I'm going to try my best to not let it stop me.
It's a fantastic opportunity to be working together with a common goal of curing MS, and sharing is the key.
We have covered a lot of ground today. One thing, a follow-up to the women, I think that is interesting, and maybe it'll take a few years to come to fruition. Women making inroads behind the camera, directing and things of this nature. So that's where we're going to have to leave it today. Now you know what we think. Let us know what you think. Please share with us your opinions, any ideas or topics you'd like us to scramble about to thescramble.unlv@gmail.com. You can also catch full episodes of The Scramble at UNLV-TV.edu. That'll do it for us this time. Thank you all so much for joining us. For all of us here at The Scramble, I hope you'll join us next time.